Okay, let's get right back into this. Balanced budget multiplier. Let me tell you, first of all, it had been a long time since I had taught intermediate macro. The last time I taught this again, and I don't remember what the year was, but maybe 5-6 years ago was the first time I taught it in a long time. And I decided that I didn't like the way I used to teach it. That if I had taken my own intermediate macro class, it was okay. So I changed a bunch of stuff around to make it more interesting. More interesting to me, at any rate, thinking of me as a student. And when I first put it together, I ended up talking about, after I just finished this multiplier thing, talking like about 3 other concepts with the multiplier. It wasn't worth the time. Teaching is, when you're trying to figure out what to put in a class, it's a cost-benefit analysis. Is the amount of time I'm going to spend on that worth how much they learn from that? And I decided, I had one with a import and a taxation factor that would alter the multiplier, and it just wasn't worth the time. But this one is. Right, so there's only one thing left out of what I used to do the first time I started reteaching this class, and that is the balanced budget multiplier. And the idea here, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I like to go over this is because when I first learned it, I was like, oh yeah, I never would have thought about that. So it really kind of stuck with me, so I thought you might find it interesting. And also it actually highlights some things in terms of policy and in terms of how the multiplier works that you might not otherwise see. This is also covered in the handout on the multiplier. So here we go. This is going to be, here's the story. What if the government were to go from, I'm an idiot. Hang on. What if the government were to go from not spending any money at all to, or taxing any money. Oh, I wrote the same thing twice. To taxing and spending $10. What impact would there be on GDP? Now your first inclination is, well, it'd leave it exactly the same. If the government took out $10 and then spent $10, it would leave it exactly the same. No, it doesn't. This is interesting, all right? So, once again, if the government went from not spending or taxing at all to spending and taxing $10, or we could say spending and taxing equal to 10 and down here to 20 or whatever, the zero is just to make it easy to start with. It doesn't have to start at 0. But it turns out that even a balanced budget stimulates the macroeconomy. Check this out. So with this multiplier, we're going to have to specify consumption a little bit differently. First equation, y equals c plus I plus g plus x minus m. Our old friend, GDP. C plus I plus g plus x minus m. And then consumption is equal to A plus B times YD. Not Y, but YD. Where YD is total income minus taxes. It's disposable income. Disposable income. Let me write that down here. Disposable income. That's the amount of income you have left after taxes. So consumption really can't take place from taxes, obviously, from money that was taxed away. It can only take place with money you have left over. So what I'm going to do now is, again, here in disposable income is just income minus taxes. By the way, you can do this same calculation with a tax rate instead of a lump sum tax. It is much more complicated for the same answer. Close enough. Once again, all right, so I'm going to do a lump sum tax. The taxation of the United States is not going to be dependent in this example on how much income there is. That's not true. In real life, it is very dependent on how much income there is. Again, this will give us the same answer, but much more quickly. All right, so all I got to do now is I'm going to have to re-derive the multiplier. So here we go. Let's see. Y is equal to A plus B YD plus I plus G plus x minus m. Okay, so notice first, I have substituted in here what came from this equation up here. Instead of c, I now have a plus b times yd. And guess what I do next? Y equals a plus b times y minus t plus I plus g plus x minus m. So what I did next, let's see, I'll use a different color. I shall use horned frog purple. All right. Next, I got that I substituted y minus t in for yd. All right, so ultimately, we substituted this in for that, and then this in for that. All right, so here's our new equation right here. And I think I'm going to need to erase all this and just write this at the top and go from there to do the derivation. All right. Y is equal to a plus b times y minus t plus I plus g plus x minus m. Okay, is that right, John? A plus b, yeah, that's right, okay. All right, now we just derived the multiplier. So let's see, first we multiply through this expression right here. Y is equal to a plus by minus bt plus I plus g plus x minus m. Get all the y's on the left-hand side. Y minus by is equal to a plus, a minus bt plus I plus g plus x minus m. Factor y out. Equals a minus bt plus I plus g plus x minus m. And then divide both sides by 1 minus b, or in other words, multiply both sides by 1 over 1 minus b. Y equals 1 over 1 minus b. A minus bt plus I plus g plus x minus m. Now notice we got the same multiplier. We've got the same multiplier. If we did the tax rate as opposed to the lump sum tax, we wouldn't get the same multiplier. We've got the same multiplier, but we have a different equation over here on the right. And notice that b enters in once again, unlike the previous example, in negatively. Here when it's multiplied by t, actually the t, that's the negative part, of course, multiplied by b. Now, let me write this equation at the top, and then I'm going to give you an example to show you what I was saying earlier, and that was that even a balanced budget will increase GDP. And then I'll tell you why, because it's really interesting. Well, it was interesting to John Harvey when he took this class in 1980. All right. See if I remember the equation. Y is equal to 1 over 1 minus b, a minus bt plus I plus g plus x minus m. All right, here's our equation. And let's make up some numbers here, because this is going to be the easiest way to make this point. Let's say, what is it, buddy? Let's say that b is equal to 0.8. Let's not use the same b all the time. And then I'm going to make it really, really simple here. A is equal to, g is equal to, t is equal to, x is equal to m is equal to 0. So we're going to just set all those to 0 just to make it nice and simple. And I is equal to, I don't know, 50. All right. So a little bit of glare on that, sorry. But I is equal to 50. All right, so let's plug that in. Y is equal to 1 over 1 minus 0.8 times 50, all right? Because everything else is 0, times 50. What's that? Let's see, that's 5, so it's 250. 250. That would be GDP. If government spending, taxation, exports, imports, and A were 0, investment was 50, then every other term up there drops out except for the I. We're just by assumption saying that the propensity to consume is 0.8, marginal propensity to consume. And so that's a 5. 1 over 1 minus 0.8 is the same thing as 1 over 0.2, which is 5. 5 times 50 is 250. All right. Now let's say that all of a sudden, that dang government, let's see, I think I'll use black. All right. The government decides that they're going to tax and spend $10 or 10 trillion, whatever we're talking about here, $10. All right, let's plug it all back in again and see what we get. Y is equal to 1 over 1 minus 0.8. Now, negative 0.8 times 10 plus 10 plus 10. Let me write over top of that what those were. This was that was B, of course, that's T, that's I, and that's G, all right? So before we just had the 10, now we've got the negative 0.8 times 10, and we've got that other 10 for government spending. So let's see what that works out to. Let's see, that's going to be, I think I'll do it over here. That's going to be 5 times, and we've got 20 minus 8, so we've got 8. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I forgot what, I wondered why I was getting such a different number. I forgot I had done investment as 50. Those of you in the home version of this are probably thinking, no, you wrote down the wrong thing. All right, here we go. 50. All right, so we have 60 minus 8, so we've got 52. There, that makes sense. Which means GDP is 260, all right? So taxing is 10, government spending is 10, and we still left investment as 50. And so that's 60 minus 8 is 52. 5 times 52 is 260. Why did GDP go up? Why did GDP go up? Now, I'll let you think about it for a second. Because it actually turns out to be really simple. That $10 that the government taxed away from people, how much of that would they have spent? They would have spent $8, right? They would have spent $8. But how much of that $10 that they taxed away, how much of it did the government spend? Well, they spent all 10 of it. They didn't just spend 80% of it, they spent all of it. When they took that money out of the paycheck, when they took that $10 out, you would have gone and spent $8 of that and thereby created more income. But the government is going to spend all of it. So they're going to spend $2 more than you would have. And what's 2 times 5? It's 10. And notice the difference. Notice the difference here is 10. Total GDP went up by $10, right? Why? Because the $2 that you would have saved, the government spent. And when they spent it, it kicked into a force. Of course, the multiplier kicked in, right? So that $2 became $10, right? So the reason why the balanced budget multiplier actually ends up with a higher level of GDP is because the government spends every penny of an amount of income that you would have saved. That was poorly worded. The government spends all of something that you would have only spent part of. You would have only spent 80%, they're spending it all, right? So that's balanced budget multiplier. What was that? 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And I think that's good for this one. I wonder how close it is to lunch now.